Okay, so today's session is about artificial intelligence towards a well-integrated approach for digital arts and humanities. It's going to be very broad coverage, very, very fast. I have a confession to make. Many years ago, over 20 years ago, I did a master. Originally, I was a philosopher, still am a philosopher. I was kind of led astray to work on and study. I did a master's in artificial intelligence in the late 1990s. Actually, the principles haven't changed very much. What has changed is processing power. The fact that, we just have these incredible machines that can do billions and billions and billions of operations very, very quickly, which we didn't have back then. I can remember coding neural networks and genetic algorithms on a Sun workstation, sharing access to a processor and memory with other people doing the same. And it kind of degenerated into just a battle to see who could take over more of the Unix processor resource. So kind of theory was there, but not a lot was possible. And now it is. There's been this kind of sudden explosion. And I kind of come back to it from an arts and humanities perspective now, thinking, okay, so what might this do for us? I'm very positive about it. I've been trying quite hard to ignore the horror stories in the press, but trying to think creatively about what might be possible. And that's what I'm going to do today. Okay. So first of all, that's going to be crazy. Let's go up to some contentious definitions. As I started to get back into this, maybe 6 months ago, I started to think, well, how are people thinking about what artificial intelligence is? Because that's like a key kind of starting point, what it is, what it isn't. And actually, it's many different things, but you need to kind of step back to, remember, I'm a philosopher, step back to a definition of what we mean by intelligence to start off with. So what is intelligence? It's lots of things, but certainly one thing that's kind of core to that is this idea that it's decision making. Okay, so we make decisions all the time, small decisions, big decisions. This is a kind of constant process that we're doing, trying to optimize our time, our resources, our lives for ourselves and other people. And that's based on perceptual inputs, knowledge, and cognitive processes by an organism, not just humans. Okay, it's not just humans doing this. There are other biological organisms that are intelligent in an environment to achieve the organism's goals. Very simple definition of intelligence. Okay, so decision making by an organism to achieve its goals based on perceptual inputs and cognitive process, etc. What then is artificial intelligence? Very simply, artificial intelligence is, I crossed out smart. For some reason, I put smart decision making offloaded to a machine. Okay, not necessarily smart. It could be lots of simple decision making, or it could be really complex decision making. It might be decision making that turns out to be pretty stupid, but we are offloading it onto a machine to reduce our human workload to achieve otherwise impossible tasks. Or maybe we're just being lazy and they are possible tasks and we just want to kind of have a lie down and just let the machines take over. So that's artificial intelligence. That offloading of what we do onto machines is actually something that humans do all the time and through history. It has been argued by the likes of Andy Clark, who's a cognitive scientist, philosopher of mind, that actually human intelligence is always situated and embedded and enabled by the kind of physical systems around us that we offload some of our decision making, some of our intelligent process into. Okay, so there's a whole kind of field of the philosophy of mind, cognitive science, that kind of thinks that actually we've been using machines in this way all the time. It's just that the machines have got more powerful, more sophisticated. We've learned to use them in really interesting ways. And just for Luke there, our friend Stellark, good guy, Australian guy who's been experimenting with the idea of augmenting his body and his mind with machines for many years, probably like 40 years, 50 years he's been doing this. Okay, so there's a whole field which kind of thinks that artificial intelligence is kind of just actually a development of what humans have been doing since they started to develop Stone Age tools and things like that. But anyway, it's offloading. And then we get on to more kind of sophisticated artificial intelligence, emergent artificial intelligence. So decision making that follows patterns that were not designed by human intelligence, designed in by human intelligence, but which emerged by chance, often a result of AI optimizing its methods through many trial and error cases. So people are starting to use ChatGPT, very sophisticated, very powerful, deep neural network learning system, and seeing original stuff coming out of that. Okay, maybe. It's very contentious. So AI trained deep neural networks may be displaying this already. Who knows? Okay. And then we get on to what happens if things go really crazy and those AI systems and that emergence that can happen in there leads to artificial intelligence behaves as an organism, developing its own goals, including self-preservation and acting to achieve them. People are starting to see glimmers of that happening, maybe. Okay, and that's kind of out of the imaginations of sci-fi writers like Asimov and Philip K. Dick. Okay, I looked at this. I thought, well, this kind of idea of us augmenting our intelligence, the really hard stuff that we do all day, by offloading some of that onto a machine. Where else have we already seen that? And where else have we already seen what great benefits it can give, but also what problems it can cause? And obvious answer is autopilot. Actually, autopilot has been using increasingly, in airplanes, increasingly sophisticated artificial intelligence for many years. Okay, and actually, there's great, if you look on YouTube, there's loads of really good videos about accidents or near accidents that happen with autopilot and exploring why they happen. One of the reasons is that the autopilot starts to do stuff that the pilots don't really understand. Okay, and the pilot suddenly realizes, hang on a minute, something's happening here we don't get. The machine intelligence is just going off and doing something strange, and the pilot wants to jump in and intervene, but they don't understand what the machine is trying to do. So you get this conflict between the two. Okay, and that's led to crashes. So the idea that you are offloading sophisticated intelligence and just letting it go is really quite challenging. So there has to be this kind of point at which you want to take back control. Pilots do this all the time. They don't understand what's going on. They want to take back control, intervene, and stop the machine intelligence from being in control. But they need to understand what the machine intelligence is doing and where it's up to. And this can cause crashes when that goes wrong. So wrote a long article there, which you can look at in your own time if you really want to, exploring what that means in relation to other kinds of artificial intelligence. So preparing this session, obviously, there's been this incredible explosion in what's possible and public availability of ChatGPT and DAHL and other tools like that. And I thought I'd experiment with them first of all to see what they're like. Okay, so like lots of other people, including many of our students, it's a good thing to do, experiment, see what's possible, get to know the machine, get to know how it works, get to know how you can offload some of your work onto it in a safe way so that you can actually then understand the results and incorporate them back into your own intelligence. Now I tried out two tools here. Copilot, which is part of the core Microsoft offering. So if you have a Microsoft account, we all do because we're members of the university, you can log into copilot.microsoft.com and have a play around with it. And I think you probably pronounced that one Find, which is another tool. There's lots of other tools out there available. I just did some experiments with it. Just looking at Copilot to start off with, which uses ChatGPT and DAHL and some other AI algorithms. By the way, the open AI company that developed ChatGPT, it's essentially a Microsoft skunkworks operation. So that's an operation that Microsoft funds. It's not part of Microsoft because it's very risky. Microsoft were very aware of the ethical risks of doing this, and they didn't want it to be actually a core Microsoft operation, but they funded it and they supported it and they made it possible. So now that Microsoft is starting to bring all of that back into the Microsoft ecosystem, the impacts are going to be astonishing. And I think we are going to see our lives and our work, how we do things, totally transformed by this in some quite interesting ways, but also some quite scary and shocking ways. We'll get onto the really scary stuff in a minute, but Copilot, you can access this and start doing stuff like, I was thinking back to when I was an undergraduate, what would it be like if I asked Copilot to write my Kant essay for me? Immediate response to my question, write an essay. Oh, by the way, just saying, I got this in creative mode. So there are different modes, you can different levels of kind of creativity and precision, and I did it creative mode, just to see. So I asked it to write an essay about Immanuel Kant, and immediately came back because it has incorporated in it, it's been trained on some ethical principles. Okay, some really basic ethical principles. Yeah, it's a bit rough and ready. But the first thing it said is, I'm sorry, I cannot write an essay for you. That would be cheating and unethical. Okay, so that's its first response. It's then given me some advice about writing an essay on Kant and some topics I might be interested in. That's cool. But actually, if I keep going back and asking more and more questions, essentially it's going to write the essay for me. I just have to piece the bits together. Won't be a very good essay, and there's going to be details in there that may be wrong, and I don't know if they're wrong. It's a very high risk thing to do. Okay, it's a good kind of starting point. It's, you know, if you treated it as just being like using the web, using Wikipedia and kind of getting stuff out to it and thinking, okay, be skeptical, that's all right. Some of it, actually, I noticed that it used the word sublimity instead of sublime, which I've not come across before. I'm going, that's a bit weird. But on the whole, it's pretty good. Although it's all just the obvious topics. Okay, so it's optimizing. One of the things you have to remember with AI is it tends to optimize. So through learning lots, what it's doing is trying to do pattern recognition and get exactly the right answer to seeing that pattern, instead of kind of veering off in different ways that human intelligence might do, because we mess around with stuff. We play, we try stuff out, we explore different kind of avenues. So yeah, it's optimized and it's got all this kind of standard answers to that you might get. And actually, it's not much better than using Wikipedia, really, to be honest. Okay, asked it again and it refused to write the essay for me and gave me some advice on essay writing and also some recommended sources, which are pretty poor recommended sources, actually. I wouldn't rely on those. So I don't think it's, you know, obviously not got much of a sense of context. So it doesn't understand, hang on a minute, this is academic work we're talking about. So the sources need to be acceptable from an academic perspective. But that's the kind of thing that it could learn. So this is just a general AI system that's trained for general use. So what did I then ask it? Tell me about Kant's theory of aesthetic judgment. And it gave me some. So I'm kind of having this conversation, getting more and more information out and building my essay effectively through this. Then I kind of veered off for, okay, so what it hasn't done is made any interesting connections out of that data set. Me being a kind of creative philosophy kind of guy, I'm thinking, but what I want to do here is make some connections with Nietzsche. So there's a bit of human creative intelligence then added into the mix. Remember, this is only augmenting my intelligence. And I'm kind of thinking, next question I'm going to ask is, relate Kant's theory of aesthetic judgment to Nietzsche. Okay, so that's an interesting thing to do that ChatGPT hasn't done. And then it comes up with some actually interesting stuff. Not very deep, still quite superficial. But one thing going down this line I did notice was, this is a bit more impressive, that some of the references it's using are actually really good. So it pointed me straight off to this paper by Andrew Bowie, which I had read some time ago. Andrew Bowie is a good source of work on this topic. I thought, yeah, that's really actually quite good. So as a starting point, and then I kind of dig down, I need to read that paper because I can't, you know, ChatGPT doesn't get it. Doesn't have the kind of creative philosophical mind that's needed to understand that and to make the connections. Yeah, because the connections aren't obvious. It veers off. Okay. So then I kind of, the whole Nietzsche thing on art, asked it to give me some examples of what Nietzsche means by the different types of art, and it was terrible. Really bad at that. And it was using DALL-E, so it veered off into using DALL-E, the image generation software to generate some images for me, and they're really rubbish, especially that one. I picked that one out especially. So going a bit deeper, did some more generating art as examples of Nietzsche. I'm not sure, it claims to have made that image. It looks like a mashup of Flemish Renaissance paintings. So there's kind of something vaguely interesting happening there, but don't know, it's not very deep, it's not very interesting. So, okay. Oh, then I wanted to see if I ask it a question about African art, how stereotypical its response would be about African art. In a way, that's a kind of leading question, say, in African art. In the same way that you can, my son has demonstrated, only 13, he messes with AI quite a lot. He's demonstrated that you can ask questions and get ChatGPT to actually give you unethical responses. And I thought it would be, straightforwardly stereotypical response, but actually it's not bad. So it starts off by saying, I can't see where it is, but basically there's no African art is a complex thing. There's lots of different styles. There's no kind of clear, simple, straightforward. But then it does start kind of jumping into stereotypical descriptions of African art, patterns and types of colours and stuff like that. So it's not too bad. I was quite impressed. Okay. So yeah, this is useful, not to be relied on, and kind of at the kind of deeper levels of kind of creative, philosophical thinking that I was looking for there, it's not really getting there. It's giving me the obvious answers too often. I tried a few other things with it. Oh, this was an interesting one, comparing to articles that I use in my research now, to see, and it didn't do too badly. Although they're kind of, again, the responses are very obvious. There's no insight there. There's nothing really much deeper. Okay. Yeah. Also asked it to, now where's the sentiment thing? So at some point I asked it to tell me this about the sentiments in one of the articles, and it got that fairly accurate. So it was able to kind of work out the language and tell me the attitude of the writer, the author, that they were being very, I forgot what the words was, very kind of hopeful, optimistic, stuff like that. And I asked it to ethically evaluate the article. So basically, is Tim Brown's article good for the world? And it came up with some good reasons why the article is good for the world. So that's not bad. That's a kind of more superficial kind of bit of text written for a broader kind of business audience, and it's not done too badly on that, although again it's very stereotypical in its responses. Okay, I did also ask it to explain my PhD to me, or at least part of my PhD, and it just repeated text straight from my PhD without actually saying that that text came from my PhD. The references are there. Oh, this was in the Find tool, the other tool, which is using ChatGPT as well. So it just copied pretty much verbatim and didn't really do anything interesting with it. Oh, although it did remind me what I wrote about some time ago, which was handy. Doesn't elaborate at all, doesn't make any interesting connections. So again, pretty limited. So the question of how useful is this in literature reviews, summarizing academic content, understanding academic texts, etc., for arts and humanities? Not really, it's not there yet. Yeah, there are signs that it's heading in the right direction, although that kind of more less optimal, more random, more speculative kind of creative thinking that I do in my research process when I'm reading papers, it may be that actually ChatGPT will never do that. Who knows? That's a question to think about. So where's it going next? Well, I said that that was ChatGPT was effectively funded and supported by Microsoft and then being incorporated back into Microsoft systems. This is where it gets a little bit scarier for us because soon this is going to be doing things like compiling your daily task list and summarizing meetings and writing agendas for meetings. Okay, so Microsoft are incorporating it into their Microsoft 365 toolset, which is Microsoft Teams, Planner, which does the to-do lists, the meetings in Teams, agendas and stuff like that, all of the Office document tools like Word, PowerPoint, etc., and actually access to all of your organization's data, supposedly in a ring-fenced way. So what it learns from processing your organization's data and data about you isn't used for other organizations. I don't quite believe that, don't quite understand the limits they're putting on that. But it's going to be very, very powerful. So Copilot for Microsoft 365, not to be confused with the standard Copilot, is being introduced now, built into the whole Microsoft toolset, and it does that using your organization's data. And it does things like organizing your meetings and your task list for you. This sounds great, but at the same time, think of the autopilot, okay? I don't want to be turning up to a meeting with all this stuff organized and going, what's going on here? I don't understand this. It's made decisions that I don't like, but I can't quite work out how to undo all of that. Okay, very powerful. It's also going to be incredibly expensive. I talked to Warwick's head of kind of Microsoft tools in the IT department, and he just went, yeah, we're not getting it yet, definitely. Not at $30 per person per month. Yeah, it's incredibly powerful, but it's going to introduce, because of that pricing, massive inequalities. Okay, so there's going to be people who've got access to this and can use it to optimize their work incredibly. I'll put in here a whole load of, won't go into this much more depth. So if you look at the Miro board, there's some advertising spin from Microsoft about it. There's a video there from Mike Tolfson, who's really good at explaining Microsoft tools and how they work from an education perspective. And actually, that video starts playing at the bit where he explains the Copilot 365 and what it's going to do for us. There's also a load of teaching tools as well that will supposedly teach children to read, teach children to do maths. Quite incredible. So I just put that in there for you to explore in your own time, and also an article in which I talk about why Microsoft are doing this. Okay, because I'm quite cynical about this, and actually I think the reason Microsoft are doing this, and the reason they funded ChatGPT, etc., is because Microsoft toolset has become so astonishingly complicated to use that you need the AI to use it. Okay, I see that all the time. Actually, modern business life has become so complicated as well that we need the AI to sort it out, rather than kind of asking the question, well, maybe we should just make things simpler. Maybe. But that's where that's going, and it's going to be very, very disruptive. Okay, so in the last 5 minutes, I'll probably go over a little bit, sorry. Coming back to digital arts and humanities, obviously all that stuff is going to have a massive impact, and we're going to have to think about how we use it and how we prepare students and ourselves to use it in the future, okay, and how we try to use it in an ethical, effective way. I'm thinking about, and actually this series of DAHL Short sessions, we're going to explore this more, the idea of a digital humanities curriculum. Formal curriculum, we may be creating a degree program or at least some modules, and so we've already got a certificate that you can do, but actually much more training, exploring, equipping people with the capabilities. There is a brilliant article, if you're really into this whole digital humanities thing, by John Chun, Catherine Elkins from a couple of small liberal arts colleges in America, where they talk about, they've developed a digital humanities undergraduate curriculum with AI at the core. It is brilliant. Okay. And I'm very inspired by this. So they've done some amazing work over the years, incorporating new technologies as soon as they come in to their teaching. What they're seeing, though, is their emphasis shifting from coding as the tools get more sophisticated and easier to use. So we need to spend less time learning Python and R and actually more time understanding the domains that we want to use AI in and how we use AI. So what they call domain experts. Here's a list of things that their digital humanities students are doing. So a topic model of Supreme Court opinions on reproductive rights, analysing correlation between union membership, minimum wage, regions. So these are kind of traditional digital humanities and social sciencey kind of artsy kinds of things, but actually they can do them better, faster, have access to data on a much bigger scale. Other ones I'm going to pick out there, explore TikTok for beauty bias. There's a similar project I'll talk about in a minute at Warwick that's doing stuff on TikTok and using AI to analyse TikTok. Analyse 6 decades of Playboy covers. Just get the AI to do that. You don't want to look at that stuff. For societal shifts and gender based. So the stuff that they're doing here is really exciting. This is undergraduates doing this. Okay, and undergraduates, they say, are from lots of different fields as well. Some of them are kind of computer science, only a minority. Some of them are philosophers, social scientists, art, very, very interdisciplinary. And they've got to the point where all those students can do powerful, useful stuff. So I'm thinking about what I've done next is an exploration of social science, typical kind of social science approaches and goals and aims, humanities, art, and poor old philosophy that I just did a little bit of thinking about to get a sense of what AI could do for each of those disciplines. Okay, I do have what might be a bit of a what's the word? Kind of unusual. I don't know. I've been in this business for a long time and kind of worked across all of these different fields, and I've got a good sense of what each of those different fields aims for or what's special about it. So the social sciences, for example, seeks to describe and classify common patterns and dynamics in human societal life. You saw that in some of the examples from that liberal arts college. So it's responding to the astonishing scale of the social by using the technology to deal with that vast amount of data that it's got access to, especially digital sociology. Okay. Humanities is focusing on, and always has focused on, overlaps with social science, but also seeks to understand human experience from inside, empathetically. So getting to actually into the shoes of people in history or different places and understanding their lives and how they think and how they act and how they feel and how that has an impact on the world. Okay, so humanities has that kind of human, empathetic aspect, different kind of scale of work. The arts takes that in a different direction by experimenting, doing things, creating to see what humans can do and what the limits of humanity are, but also trying to go beyond those limits. Okay. And then philosophy is kind of integral to all of those disciplines, and it's that kind of meta-critical thinking about our thinking and being critical about our biases, etc. So let's just dive really, really fast. I'm over time, but this is only, well, we did start slightly late, so I have an excuse. Just going to whiz into some examples of AI-based research or AI-enabled research in those different fields for those different purposes. So that social science thing about describing, classifying common patterns and dynamics of human social life. Deep neural networks are good at finding patterns in data, text, numerical, visual. You can train the neural network on what to look for, a model, using a training set. So that's work that you as a researcher have to do. And then it will perform billions of operations to find those matches and to analyze what you've got. It seems like magic, but it's actually doing simple things billions of times very quickly. For example, you could look at clusters of cases in parish records related to geographic features on a historical map. Now, I've just got involved in a project and went to a lecture about, so Jeffrey Allen Rhodes from Shanghai came and gave a talk last week. It was brilliant. This stuff's really interesting. That's Jin Hao from WMG. And what they're doing is kind of genetic, and I won't go into details what that means, genetic analysis of audience responses to immersive museum experiences. So they are identifying immersive museum experiences around the world, and then they're using social media responses, text and video, to analyze people's responses and try to classify those responses and look for patterns. That's really interesting because using that social media data and AI, which is fast and powerful, they're getting closer to doing real-time analysis of just geographically distributed audiences at massive scale. So they can kind of look at people in this location, having that experience, very large numbers of people, and see how they've responded and look for the patterns, which is really interesting. Okay, that's powerful stuff. So that's a kind of what I would call a social sciencey kind of angle on this. So I just dropped in here. I've also been, in preparation for this, looking into different tools that we can use, that we have access to, and different tools that we can use to learn this stuff and experiment with it ourselves as researchers. This was recommended by my son. He says it's absolutely superb. I had a look at it. It's brilliant. So Kaggle allows you to do neural networks online on a web page with the processing done on a Google server, so your poor little laptop doesn't get kind of overblown by all of this processing. So it happens on TPU, specialist processors in the Google clouds. And it's also got training materials built in, so you can follow courses in there. So we might do, if there's popular demand, a learning circle around that, because you can also use R or Python to do that. Python seems to be much more common tool for it. And also I found a really good, you can access this from the link, really good tutorial there about doing neural networks with R, which is, I think, a very common digital humanities programming system that's designed for people who aren't programmers. Okay, I really like those. Okay, so that empathy thing, just very quickly, I won't show you this video now. So this was a video created by a friend of mine, Catherine Allen, and it's a VR experience rather not a video, where you go back in time with a guide to a real person whose oral history they have transcribed and reperformed. You go back in time to some real events with them, and they give you a guide through that. And it's aimed at building empathy with that person and trying to understand why they did what they did. And also stepping back and being critical about their story and thinking, well, what would we do if that happened now? So that's a whole kind of empathy thing in the humanities, getting close to people. Can AI do empathy? So this really fascinating, this article came out yesterday in Aeon magazine, which is a superb online free magazine that we can all access. Seth Lazar have been experimenting with ChatGPT and had seen signs of ChatGPT being empathetic. So it gave it a kind of scenario, a woman with a child crossing the road, going to get into a car. And actually the response that ChatGPT gave, you can read it in there, seemed to be empathetic. Okay, that may be just an illusion, or it may be just chance. That needs to be tested more. But these models, these neural network models, are getting quite sophisticated. Very interesting. So you might think then, could we use that to, if we give them a scenario that's in history, for example, to go and be empathetic about, say, 1,000 people in Rome in 300 BC, something like that. Okay, so that's of interest to the humanities, and that might be a whole route for using AI in research that opens up. Possibly. Okay. So then we've got the arts, which is about now seeing what's possible, the limits of the human, trying to understand the human by doing creative practice and going beyond that and seeing where we can go and do things that are unexpected, unpredicted. Like I was saying earlier, ChatGPT seems to, most of these algorithms tend to want to optimize. So if you look at DALL-E, the kind of visual creation tool, it's not great. Okay, it's not doing anything interesting yet. The question we're asking is, for example, the Turing test, which was the idea that if you could have a chat with an AI, not knowing it's an AI, and you've assumed that the AI is human, then that AI has achieved some kind of special status. People are thinking of new ways of taking that idea and testing to see the boundaries of what's machine and what's human. So, for example, asking the question, can ChatGPT-3 pass a writer's Turing test? So could they write something in a style that is convincingly of that style, but also original? And the answer there is kind of yes and no. So that's the kind of research that's being done in that genre. Another one here that I'm involved in, and I think the 6th of March, the next DAHL Shorts session, we're going to explore this more with Jim Judges, who is a real stand-up comedian and a researcher. The question of, could you be in VR? So VR comedy clubs exist. You can go to a VR comedy club like Soapstone, and you can see real people as avatars doing stand-up comedy. What if that stand-up comedian in VR, the avatar, wasn't actually powered by a real human? Could you get an AI to do stand-up comedy in a VR comedy club and be convincing, engaging, possibly even funny? What would that be like? So again, that's kind of another question that we're asking about AI that kind of explores what it is to be human or a machine, and actually think maybe we're not that special, or maybe we are really special and only humans can do this comedy stuff. We'll see. Another genre of arts research with AI. I just love this stuff. So Bait Al-Fan is a brilliant organization for promoting research and practice in Islamic arts, design, architecture. And they had this tweet stream a while back of AI generated 3D Islamic-ish architecture. So taking kind of Islamic architecture principles, the patterns, and seeing what's possible with it, and generating huge numbers of these models. Then a human's going to look at them and go, okay, that one's good, that one's bad. But actually, this kind of generative AI, just actually exploring the possibilities. I think that's absolutely superb. And those models are beautiful. Similar kind of vein, London College of Fashion, this was in The Guardian earlier in the week, using generative AI to create ideas for new clothes. Okay, actually, if you look at them, they're not very interesting. They're not very novel. I don't know. Yeah, they all look a bit kind of copied from Dune or kind of Andor or something like that, maybe. And in fact, the article's not that interesting because there's a whole load of challenges that actually this could help us to tackle in fashion and design, to do with making clothes that are more sustainable, more enduring with people, that people want to share and exchange or keep hold of, making clothes that are more adaptable to different people, and designing clothes to fit better. Yeah, that would be nice if clothes could fit better, because mine don't. And also working out the economics of flowing revenue back through the supply chain. There's a load of creative challenges there that they're not really tackling, just kind of trying to make novel clothes that just look a bit different. So, but there's a lot of potential there. Could be very interesting. And finally, I didn't get much time to think about my own discipline, philosophy. It's kind of integral to all of that, but also it does this thing applying this metacritical filter on understanding, seeking to be aware of and mitigate against our own biases, understand our own thinking, and critically questioning. And actually, one of the things that I would really appreciate is AI that could map out my arguments for me, my influences, my assumptions, to identify strengths and weaknesses, unstated assumptions, etc. Okay, to kind of bolster my self-critical thinking. That would be really useful. So that's a whole bunch of possibilities how AI might, from the kind of very mundane ChatGPT helping me write my essay or doing my research, through running my life with Copilot 365, scary, and then thinking about how this fits into different kind of disciplinary goals and approaches in the arts and humanities. Okay. And oh, I'm 10 minutes over. We did start late though. So that's the kind of speaky bit done. Let me just mention that our next session, I said the 6th of March, same time, same place, and online, Fab 501. We are going to be looking at technology, performance, immersion, and comedy with Jim Judges, who's a researcher and a stand-up comedian. He's very funny. Okay, thank you.